Senior majoring in economics at Spelman College. I'm an honors student and co-lead of Spelman Protege, a student organization focused on mentorship, scholarship, and leadership. I am also a collegiate member of Delta Sigma Theta Sorority Incorporated. On behalf of Spelman College, it is my pleasure to welcome everyone to Courageous Conversations, Black in the C-Suite. The purpose of Courageous Conversation is to inform and inspire. It is only fitting that Spelman College spearhead this great opportunity for the connection, engagement, education, and most important, empowerment of Black women. I am honored to introduce this virtual conversation between Spelman College 10th President and CEO, Soar Tasanda Brown Duckett. Ms. Brown Duckett, you are truly an inspiration, and I admired your profound commitment to sisterhood, scholarship, and service, exemplified through your professional and personal journey. As my fellow classmates and I strive to become leaders in our respective fields, thank you for shattering this glass ceiling for Black women everywhere around the world. And now, virtual audience, please join me in welcoming two extraordinary women, Spelman College President Dr. Mary Schmidt Campbell and Ms. Tasanda Brown Duckett. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mackenzie, and congratulations on being a graduating senior class of 2022. And thank you for the leadership role that you have played and continue to play at Spelman College. We appreciate it deeply. How's everybody doing? Let me know in the chat how you are today. It is so good to be with you as we've gotten the semester underway. Our classes are in person and we're back together again as a community. So just enter into the chat how you're doing today. Throughout this conversation, you'll be able to post some of your questions in the chat. And throughout the conversation, we'll answer those questions from time to time. And at the end, there'll be time for me to address any questions that are remaining in the chat. It's really good for us to have Thasunda Brown Duckett today, President and CEO of TIAA, a Fortune 100 financial services firm. As TIAA's CEO, Thasunda leads a company whose mission is defined by financial inclusion and opportunity, goals and values that she has upheld throughout her very impressive career. Prior to stepping into her role at TIAA in May 2021, Thasunda has had an extensive experience in financial services. She was the consumer banking CEO and Advancing Black Pathways executive. She was the consumer banking CEO and Advancing Black Pathways executive sponsor at JP Morgan Chase, where she empowered more people in the Black community to further their education. She's held several very impressive posts at Chase, and before coming to Chase, she was Director of Emerging Markets at Fannie Mae, and in that role, expanded home ownership opportunities for Black and Latinx families. Now, in addition to all that she does in her professional career, she also holds positions on a number of boards, both public boards and not-for-profit boards. She is a member of the board of Nike, the University of Houston Board of Visitors, Jack and Jill of America, to name just a few. We are so pleased to have Thasunda Brown Duckett with us this afternoon to talk candidly about what it means to be Black and a woman in the C-suite. Thasunda, you have such an interesting career. Please tell us, share with us how you got there. I think for our students, we look at successful women like you and think, oh my goodness, how did she make that journey? Tell us about your journey.
Well, first, let me just say I'm doing well, Dr. Campbell, having the opportunity to have this dialogue with you. And I do want to acknowledge Mackenzie, who is just phenomenal. She represents what excellence means and makes me just proud to know that our future is in great hands because of the women, young women like Mackenzie. So excellent job, Mackenzie. In terms of the journey, you know, like I always say, in the spirit of my father, Otis Brown, people see your glory, but they don't know your story. And the reality is, I did not envision becoming a CEO, let alone in a company, at a company like TIAA, a Fortune 100. But what I did know and what my parents taught me was to reach for the moon, because even if I missed, I would be among the stars. And so when you think about how I got here, it is that grounding that was instilled in me in terms of those values, not just what my parents said, but also what I experienced. And I think that's important because we all have a narrative. And for me, that narrative is being raised by two parents who did the very best that they could, even at times when their best was not sufficient. It's understanding, seeing firsthand struggle, seeing sacrifice, learning the power of grit and tenacity. Those are values that truly are the anchor of being the best version of yourself, inclusive of becoming a CEO. In terms of real moments along the way, I will highlight a few. One is my love of sports. I do think it's important that we are well-rounded. And for me, sports taught me teamwork. It taught me disappointment. It taught me on any given day, you can arrive and conquer odds. It taught me the power of me always trying to get better. And so I do think that that spirit of sports, the teamwork, those are values that have truly, truly benefited me along the way. Inroads, Dr. Campbell, was my disruptor. And so when I think about programs, when I think about the important role that corporate America has to make sure that we are in the ecosystem of where talent can be birthed, Inroads was that for me. Without Inroads, I would not be here.
Tell us about Inroads.
So Inroads is a program for minorities that are looking to major in business or STEM. And what makes Inroads special are a couple of things. One, to be a part of a program where I saw myself. So many times we're in rooms where we're the only, or you're striving for excellence. Sometimes you can say, am I a unicorn? What Inroads taught me at a very young age is that the magic is real and that there are more Tasandas in the world. And I think that's so important because it's not sufficient that there's only one or two or three of us running a Fortune 500 company. When I know firsthand, when I am in programs like Inroads, or when you visit a campus like Spelman, you know that talent is created equally, opportunity is not. So that gave me this confidence that even though in this boardroom or at this meeting, I may be the only one, I am not alone. So that Inroads taught me that at a very young age. Secondly, and I think this is a real gem, how I even got to Inroads. One, the power of information. There was parents, Mr. and Miss Patterson, who told me about Inroads. My mother is an educator. My father worked in a warehouse, did not go to college. They gave me information, and that changed my trajectory. The second piece that I want everyone to understand is that when Fannie Mae, which is the company I interned with, Dr. Campbell, they had one internship job. Valerie Manning came to the campus where all the interns were interviewing, and she found the one intern, and her name was Sarah. But Valerie Manning, who was an HR recruiter, not responsible to exceed expectations, not leading a huge team, for whatever reason was compelled to say, I found the one intern, but there's this other girl. The reason why I like to share this is because advocacy can happen when you don't even know it's happening. I don't know what I said. I don't know what it was about, but I do know that I showed up to the very best of my ability. But on the other side, I don't know if Valerie Manning thought that she would get extra points to go back and advocate for this young intern. But it's important for everyone to understand at every level, you have power. Right. At every level. And if you see something, if you see talent, do not let your rented title limit your opportunity to give someone a shot that ultimately can help your company get better. And that's what Valerie Manning did for me. Inroads was my start, and that's why I'm a fierce advocate of providing exposure and access to information.
Well, Valerie Manning must have seen something in you, Thasunda, and so it means that when you came into that room, you brought all of yourself in a dynamic way into that room, and you made a connection with her. You established a relationship right then and there. So you never know where those connections and where those relationships will take you.
You're so right, Dr. Campbell. And I think what's so insightful is when you're young, all I had was who I am. That's all I had. All I had was what Otis and Rosie Brown taught me. All I had was to show up as the best version of a 19-year-old. I didn't have a network. I didn't understand returns or positive SVA or any of those financial terms. And I think that's that innocence that also can be your differentiator, because in that innocence, you're showing the spirit of who you are if you choose to show up that way. And so I think what she saw was Tasanda.
Right.
And Tasanda was sufficient. And I think that's an insight that we all have to understand, especially Black women, that your magic, your superpower resides within you.
Yes.
And to show up unapologetically the best version of you, because that your voice is necessary and required. That spirit, that spark, that resiliency, that tenacity, those shoulders of the giants that we stand on. I brought all of those women into that room, I guess, when I was being interviewed with Valerie, because she saw something in me, but I think she saw something that I could represent as well. And I think that really resonated with her.
Right. So you go into Fannie Mae, into this internship, and you bring that dynamic self into the room, but you still have to acquire certain skills and competencies, because this is financial services, and it's very quantitative, and it's very much about some very hard skills. How did you begin that process of learning what was necessary for you to really master your job?
Well, first, I do have to acknowledge the secretaries in corporate America. Many times you see yourself in them because they look like you.
Okay.
And what they taught me was some real insight. They taught me, they showed me what people were reading. They gave me the insight that if you have to make a copy, because back then it was about copies, if you have to make a copy, read it, engage in a conversation. And so that insight, when you talk about the hard skills and the complexity, don't skip the people that may be furthest removed from those power seats. Because for me, it was those secretaries that took me under my wing to give me that extra little confidence, to tell me who's who, to show me how to navigate, to remind me who I am. So that is just an important moment I want to make sure that I share. In terms of the skills, here's what I would say. I am intellectually curious. I am not afraid, and never have been, to acknowledge what I don't know. The power of a question can show your smartness. And so I do think it's important to have this curiosity muscle. And for me, I would try to read everything. My boss, I would demonstrate that I'm hungry. And so I would come to work early because he would give me that extra time in the morning where I could just ask questions on things that he may have said during the week or things that I've heard and said, what does this really mean? And so I do think that intellectual curiosity, the ability to show up when no one is watching, the ability to shoot. If you were basketball, Jordan was great because he shot 1,000 free throws when no one was in the room. And so that was important. The power of the question, the intellectual curiosity, the power of connection, so that my boss would be open to showing up for me, for this intern, is important, which means he has to see your grind. He has to see that you are self-motivated, that he would want to take time to help you because you have started to show that you're already in motion. I think is important. So for me, that was great. And I'll tell you one little insight. One of my first bosses had this extensive vocabulary. And so, I mean, it was extensive. And I came to work every day and asked him to give me a new word.
Wonderful.
I mean, so it was a relationship connection, but it also was helpful because his vocabulary was like I said, was on another level. And instead of me, feeling insecure about it, I said, well, I need you to give me a word every day, so that I can expand my vocabulary. And it was a great connection point. So those are the ways I think you have to hone your skills, including on the technical side. By the way, I did go and get my MBA while I was working.
Okay.
And so being a lifelong learner is important.
Mhm.
Always saying it's better to have it and don't need it than to need it and don't have it.
Right.
And whether that's an advanced degree, whether that's taking an extra course, whether that's signing up for the programs at your employment, all of those things evidence that you are a learner in an environment that is ever changing, an environment where new techniques I've never seen before. It's that muscle memory that I think is important, especially when you're navigating corporate America and financial services.
I love the advice that you can learn from everybody in the community, from the secretary who's sitting to your boss who gave you a new word every day. And I also love the notion of asking questions. You don't have to show up with the answers. You're an intern. You do not have to have but you have to demonstrate that kind of curiosity in the world around you. I think that is absolutely extraordinary advice. Now, while you were an intern, did you have a mentor? Did you have a sponsor? How did you cultivate those relationships?
Yeah, I mean, I think looking back, I had a village, and I would say the secretaries were part of my village. I would say my boss was definitely a mentor for me. And I remember when I was a top performer and I asked about my compensation. And I asked him to just take a look because I know I'm one of the youngest, but I also know that I have performed. And I will trust you if you come back and tell me it is sufficient. My comp was adjusted. And so when you think about the power of mentorship, sponsorship, advocacy, he was all of that for me in that way. But I would also say that my peers, the other interns, were a part of my mentorship. Sometimes we're so busy looking up, you miss where you are and being able to surround yourself with some vulnerability to engage and to get better. Lastly, I would say, Dr. Campbell, when I talk about mentorship, sponsorship, and advocacy, mentorship can come from people who are alive and dead. Because when you are young, especially being a Black girl whose parents knew nothing about corporate America, I had to read, and I did not have a network.
Right.
I relied on books. I relied on people who inspired me. Autobiographies, to hear the journey of a Condoleezza Rice. That can be your mentor. And so sometimes it's important to just make sure, especially when you're young and you don't know Tasanda or Dr. Campbell yet, but you do have access to being mentored. Mentorship is all around you. The advocacy and the sponsorship, I think, is important because many people ask, well, how do you get someone to advocate for you or to sponsor you? Your brand has to be consistent. A consistent brand. How are you when no one is looking? How do people talk about you? Not your what, but your how. So that someone is compelled to take some of their equity for you.
Right.
That's not a question you ask. That is an experience someone has to see.
Right.
And so I just think that's very important. And how do you get that? I do think you have to really work at being the best version of yourself, making sure you're showing your IQ and your EQ, making sure that your how, because that's your transferable skill.
Right.
You can get to a number or you can read a report and do a great job, but you may decide you want to move to a different area. It's your how you collect the information, how you think about things, how you ask the questions, how you work and manage through influence, where people can say, I can do this, but I think she could also do this because I understand her how. So that's how I think about mentorship, advocacy, and sponsorship.
Thank you. That's a great answer. So at Fannie Mae, you made a real impact on the ability for communities to have home ownership. And that is so important and so central to building Black wealth and building intergenerational wealth and stability. Talk a little bit about how you began thinking about how financial services could be of service to our communities.
Oh, wow. I mean, growing up without homeownership, I grew up with my parents and my two brothers when we lived in New Jersey in a 2-bedroom apartment. When we moved to Texas, Dr. Campbell, we packed everything that we owned and drove. And I started my life going into the 5th grade, sitting on crates. I know what it's like to have financial insecurity. That sticks with you.
Yeah.
And so now you fast forward and you're working in corporate America and you understand our history and you understand the struggle, you understand the wealth creation that we are lacking, not because we don't desire, but because structurally there were impediments, because the education in the community may not have been aware of how, the knowledge, all the things that are required. That lit a fire in me because my parents wanted me to have the very best too. And so when I think about the power of home ownership, when I think about the power of financial inclusion, it's important to not just say what is possible, but to show the playbook on how is it possible. To understand that, yes, this is your aspiration and our dream for our community, but what are the answers to the test? What is that regression? And helping people understand, we know how to keep it 100. How do we keep it 700? Why is that important? How does that differ? What does it mean to not just obtain home ownership, but sustain it? What does it mean to not just try to boss up on your first house and it's big and you're not sure when the taxes increase and then you can't keep it? Then maybe starting with a smaller home and building that equity. So the point is, Dr. Campbell, working at Fannie Mae, where the mission is the business and the business is the mission, I still remember that, was personal for me. And that is a fire that says, in my role, while I am in my seat at every level, even as an intern, what am I doing with this information? How am I sharing this with my family, with my network, with my ecosystem? And as I progressed in my career, I always went back to those narratives of how I grew up. And that has sparked the answers to the test to say it's not sufficient for me to just deliver the results from a business lens. It is an obligation and in effect a mandate to make sure that I'm bringing that insight to people that are not having the same access, to make sure they understand the answers to the test, to be able to achieve wealth creation.
Right. So you look at your very privileged position as an opportunity for you to garner this information and get that information out.
Absolutely. Without judgment, by the way, because I do think it's important that when we talk about financial services, when we talk about home ownership, when we talk about savings, investing, judgment, shame comes with that too. And so it's important for us to have the narrative, not just the technical aspects of your credit score and your budget and how to invest, but to talk about it without judgment or shame.
Right.
To be able to meet people where they are and then take them on that journey, I think is very important. And I think that's how you get our community to be able to understand it doesn't matter where you've been. It doesn't matter where you are. What matters is, can you make one step forward? And over time, you can change that narrative when you think about wealth creation.
Right. We are 30 minutes into our conversation. As I said, time flies when we're engaged in such a wonderful conversation. And I want to let our audience know that if you have questions for Thasunda Brown Duckett, please feel free to enter them into the chat and we'll be sure to direct those questions to her. I couldn't help but be just bowled away by your career at JP Morgan Chase. You really assumed a very preeminent role there, and use that opportunity to continue this conversation with your community about financial services and about wealth creation. Before I ask you a specific question about JP Morgan, can you talk a little bit about the wealth gap? We've mentioned the wealth gap several times here. Can you share with us what that really means for our community? The fact that there are these stark disparities, not only in income, but also in net worth for African American communities, especially?
No, the stats are alarming when you think about the wealth gap in our country, and when you think about that, if Black families were at parity, what that would mean to GDP, what that would mean in terms of wealth creation, $200 billion. I mean, the numbers are big. When you think about what the challenges are and why the time is to operate with a sense of urgency. If I take you to a couple stats in terms of where we are today, unemployment, we know that there's all these jobs that are available. Black women post the pandemic, unemployment was up from 7.9% in August, up from 7.6% in July, even though the unemployment rate for women overall went down from 4.8 from 5%. So here we are. Black women, I think, was the only sector where the unemployment rate went up. That's today. When we think about the power of wealth, we have to look at the fact that African Americans are disproportionately in lower wage earning jobs. Mm-hmm. And when you talk about home ownership, when you talk about investing, we have to have career paths. We have to have viable jobs in order to create that wealth that we want, in order to have equity. And when I look at some of the stats, and I look at even, again, as Black women, only 1.6% of Black women are in the C-suite. Only 1.4 is in the C-suite, 1.6 is at a VP level. And so when you think about those stats, when you think about where are the earners, the latest stats of graduating with an MBA, I think, was over $100,000 according to Fortune. If Black women are not graduating with MBAs, that's six figures. And so my point is, we know that at every metric, home ownership gap, we know wealth, we know that we are on a position as a community to have zero net worth. Mm-hmm. To go the other way, even though the size of the money we're generating could be the size of the GDP of Russia. So when you look at the resources we're giving out, our money is outflowing. It's not compounding. It's not changing the shift. And so what's important, and I think especially for this conversation, is that as we think about career pathing, we have to also make sure that Black women can imagine, can see themselves, that corporate America will cast wider nets to make sure that we see Black women in STEM, 500,000 jobs in cyber. We have to make sure that we see ourselves, regardless of our major today, can see how can I transfer those skills into roles where there's earning opportunity? And then how can I make sure we have the knowledge, that we have the knowledge to go with that earning power so that we can put it to work for our community. The stats are not great, but today we can do better. Right. And I think that's the forward lens we have to be relentless about. And I think as long as people like yourself, people like myself are in positions to share that information and platform, we have a mandate to do just that.
Absolutely. We have a few questions that have come in from our audience. One is, do you have advice for junior to mid-level employees who would like to progress into leadership roles? They may find themselves at companies like Fannie Mae or JP Morgan Chase or TIAA. What advice would you have them to continue on their leadership journey?
Right. No, it's such a great question. And uh, I'll break it down in 3 dimensions. First, please, and I'm telling you not what I think, but what I've experienced, get the mental gymnastics out of your head. Because many times we are having these mental gymnastics about our worth, about our value, about our contribution. And when you are trying to be promoted, the shoulders have to be back and that confidence has to be there. But the mental gymnastics will have you hunched over and not be seen. That is real. The second piece that I would say is it's not just your what, it is your how. And so many times, make sure you're not so busy looking down that you're not putting your head up and making sure that people can see you, not just your work. That people can see you. Do they know your name? Do they know how you worked? Are you telling that story? For example, because I like to model the behavior we aspire. If you have put together a great report on earnings, you were part of the analyst team as an intern or as a first year employee, you want to give that to Tasanda. You would say, Tasanda, I just want you to know, let me reintroduce myself. My name is Susie Smith, and I was part of the analyst team. And one of the things that I was very proud of was when you asked for this, I was able to work across with other areas who provided me some additional insight and perspective that allowed me to be able to What I just said in that one statement is 1, you know who I am. 2,
Right.
you know I'm part of the team. 3, you know that I can work across function. It's not about it's about team. And 4, I'm telling you how I think. And so those are things that I think are important. And then be clear. Everyone has a different path. Sometimes people get tapped. Sometimes you have to knock on that door and introduce yourself. And so you have to say, is this working for me? Because if not, you'll say, I'm delivering all the work. Why am I not getting tapped?
Right.
Well, if you're not getting tapped, then you may have to engage. Make sure you can connect to the people that can help you. Make sure you are participating in other organizations where leaders are there. People have to know you, not just your work. It's you that needs to get there. And then lastly, I would say on this point, make sure that you are building your network. And it's not just trying to get to meet with Tasanda, but those cross peers in other areas. You want your brand to become a flywheel. And the more that you are talking to different people, the more they get to know you, you will be in conversation. You will be in conversation. So those are just some tips that I would just offer up to those that are aspiring to move up.
Those are great tips. I hope everybody is writing those down. I'm going to take us back to sort of earlier in your career because I have a question that's come. I believe it's a question from one of our students who's putting yourself back in the position of when you were a student before you even took that internship. What advice would you give students who are still trying to identify their career path? They might not know which way to go or which path to choose. What advice do you have for them?
It's such a great question. And again, I was not like as awesome as Mackenzie in college. And so I did not have it figured out. And that's okay. I would say to you, if I had to go back to my younger self, take a breath. I do not have to have it all figured out. But what I do know is that whatever class I am taking, I have the ability to exercise that muscle, that intellectual curiosity, the ability to get uncomfortable, the confidence to ask a professor a question, the ability to come in early to prep and prepare, the networking with other students who may be smarter than me that can help, having the confidence to understand what value can I bring to this network. My point is, while you're in the moment, be in the moment. And if you don't have it all figured out, that is okay. You are at Spelman. There are resources to say, I need help in helping me navigate. Here's what I like. Here's what I'm doing. Here's the work. Here are the classes. Here are the courses. Here are the peers you can talk to. You don't have to have it all figured out. And by the way, I will say this, it is okay if you had to shift your major. It is okay if it happened to take you a little extra time to graduate. It is okay if you graduate with your degree and you don't start in that degree. This is a journey. What's most important are your ownable skills that you are acquiring along the way that will ultimately allow you to achieve your goals and provide that clarity that you're looking for.
Yes, there's another question that's come up that's also related to being on that journey. So now you figured out what path you want to take and you're in a job interview. How would you advise young people to prepare themselves for a job interview? That's not something we do in our 4 years of college usually.
No.
It's a whole new way of connecting.
Oh my goodness. And you know what? The advantage that young people have today is that they have the oasis to know what excellent looks like through the power of technology.
Correct.
And so what I would say to all the young people, one, the competition is fierce and intense. It is a global market. You are not competing against just the people in your geography or just the people who graduated. You are competing against the world. So show up and prepare as such. And so what I mean by that is your resume. Does it tell a story or an insight? Not just the bullets, but does it give you an element of your how? Something that can differentiate yourself, because we are all uniquely positioned to do that. Secondly, prepare. If you are going to be interviewing at TIAA, do not come into an interview and ask me my mission. You should already know that. You should know how many CEOs we've had. You should know that I may be the first woman. You should do your research to know who we serve in higher ed. You should know who our clients are. You should know probably more than the person interviewing, because you have more time to do the research. So do the research so that you are asking a thoughtful question, a question that maybe you could not Google, so that you're getting an insight to that interview that says, wow, that was a great question. The next piece I would really encourage is to practice. Practice. Good. You have this beautiful phone that you can be interviewing and play it back. You can send it to 5 friends to critique you. You can say, am I showing up as the best version of myself? Is my shirt ironed and creased? Right? Am I enunciating properly? Just quiz me. So that I think is important. And even for me, early in my career, I took Toastmasters. I'm always looking for opportunities to hone my skills. I was young, taking Toastmasters, trying to minimize the ums and the ins, right? So my point is, when you are showing up for that interview, prepare. Game on. Make sure you do your research so that you can ask insightful, thoughtful questions. And make sure that all your questions are not so scripted that you're not listening. Make sure you're listening to that interviewer so that you can bridge some insight that they may have said that you were able to continue, because you weren't so scripted that you missed a moment to connect.
Right.
Also follow up. By the way, this is a gem.
Yeah.
Email is beautiful. Follow up with a handwritten note.
There you go.
Follow up with a handwritten note. Make sure that when you put that handwritten note, it's not just a generic, thank you for the time, I really appreciate it, I hope, Bring that relationship insight.
Right.
Bring something about them or something that they said and how that resonated with you. Be thoughtful in that approach so that you put that exclamation point that you are standing out. You sent an email for real time and you followed up with a card, with a note. That sets you apart. It's the little things.
I could not agree more. That can make all the difference. And it can make you, even as the person interviewing, reconsider somebody perhaps that you weren't considering
Absolutely.
And I love the Toastmaster advice. The notion that as polished as we may be in our speaking, we can still learn how to present in a way that has impact, and that can be learned. It's not
Absolutely. Dr. Campbell, what I love about this question, and I failed to say it, but I think is important for young people, know that your narrative is important and necessary. Yes. It's okay. It's okay if your humble beginnings are not what you would think someone at TIAA in an executive position would understand. Bring you to the interview. Bring you. Tell your story. Whether it was a wonderful two-parent home, upper middle class, you still have an insight and a narrative. Or whether it was struggling with a single mother doing the best she can, how has that impacted you?
Right.
Those are points that set you apart, because that authenticity, that vulnerability, that perspective can be your differentiator. Do not think that the only thing you start with is I graduated from Spelman College.
Right. No, very important. We have a couple of questions that really ask about managing on the job. The first question is from Michelle, who would like to really understand how you manage the challenges and adversity that you have to navigate in corporate America. It's a glorious position to hold, but a position like yours inevitably has challenges and conflicts and obstacles that have to be overcome. How do you navigate that?
First of all, I give myself grace. I just think it's important, because I'm acknowledging that I'm not always going to be right. I'm acknowledging at go that I'm going to make mistakes. As a new CEO at TIAA, I've asked my team already for grace. In terms of how to navigate, I have realized it's a we thing. Mm-hmm. And what I mean by that is the way you navigate as a team. Mm-hmm. You navigate with clarity of role and responsibility. You understand that ultimately I am accountable. So that means that if we are making a decision and I empowered you to make a decision and it wasn't the best decision, mm-hmm. I am right there with you.
Right.
That is important on how you navigate. Yeah. Additionally, I think it's important to realize that even as the leader, I am also the student. And so I think that's important, especially when you're navigating difficult waters. We're navigating a pandemic. We're navigating social justice. We're navigating return to office. We're navigating partnering with higher ed institutions that have had so many changes. I have to be the student and listen to my team, listen to my employees, listen to my clients, and let them teach me, so that I can import that into my toolkit, so that then I can export out a better solution, a refined strategy. Finally, I would say the importance of your village, because you will have moments where it's lonely. Heavy who wears the crown. You will have moments of exhaustion because you care. Mm-hmm. You have to have a base, a strong base, so that when you're navigating those highs and lows, when you're really working around the clock to make the best decisions possible, you have to have that network where you can breathe, where you can be so vulnerable that people will be able to say, it's okay, pour back on you, give you some insight and advice, give you that courage to get back in there and make the best decisions that you ultimately can. Teamwork, grace, be the student, and make sure you surround yourself with a great village.
I love that. I love all of it. So from a personal point of view, you have a family. How are the ways that you balance achieve equilibrium, and what are the moments of self-care that you allow yourself or insist on for yourself?
Yeah, it's a journey. And what I balance, I don't do. In fact, I could not balance it all.
Mhm.
So I shifted my mindset, Dr. Campbell, to a portfolio. And is that I start with an allocation. And I have 100% allocation, not 110. And within that allocation, I am a mother, an executive, I'm a sister, I'm a daughter, I'm an auntie. I am all those things. Portfolio. And here is it has given me the ability to say, when I am working on earnings or taking on a new role, I am over allocated on that executive category. Mm-hmm. I may have had to reduce my allocation on my philanthropy. Mm-hmm. When that curve is over, or that moment, mm-hmm. I reallocate, because mm-hmm. Here is the point. Here is the point. I know that in certain moments when I am really intense and focused at work, I may not be in that moment the best mommy. Mm-hmm. Over time, I am a really good mother. At this moment, when I've not had a chance to visit Otis and Rosie Brown, I may feel sometimes that I'm not a great daughter. Mm-hmm. But I know over time, I am an amazing daughter. So just like a diversified portfolio, I am responding to market conditions. Mm-hmm. I may have to short the stock. But over time, just like a diversified portfolio, you will outperform. And my diversified portfolio is enabling me to outperform this thing called life, because everything that matters to me is allocated, even if it's just 1% at that moment. That is how I try to show up. And the other insight is I've acknowledged that I do not give my children, for example, 100% of my allocation. They probably are 30, 25. Mm-hmm. But within that allocation, because now I'm real about it,
right?
I am so much more present.
Yes.
Because I give them 100% of me within that allocation, because I understand it's an allocation.
Right.
So right. I end up being much more productive, much more intentional, and ultimately I have joy.
I've never heard it described that way, and I love it. It's perfect. It's absolutely perfect. You now, having assumed a new role, you're 5 months into the role, and you were doing great at JP Morgan Chase. Top of the world, everything's going great. When do you know it's time for you to take a step away and go into a new challenge? What are the signs for you?
You know what, Dr. Campbell? There's a lot that we've gone through with this pandemic and social justice. And one of the beauties is it stripped us to our core. Yes. I mean, it broke us.
Yes.
And for me, while I was navigating 50,000 people through a pandemic, many that went to work every day.
Yeah.
When I had to navigate my Black son saying, "Mommy, why do white people think they're better than us?" Mm. When I had to reflect on the daughters that I am raising, I was exhausted. Mm-hmm. But what it also allowed me to do was to reflect. And I took a moment. And what I realized is that there was more that I wanted to do. There was more impact I wanted to make. And so I think the first thing that I learned in taking this step at a job I loved, an amazing company, some of the most brilliant minds, Jamie Dimon at the helm, so many wonderful things. But I was like, I think I can do more. And so I think about your jobs as containers.
Yes.
And the reality is, I felt holistically that I may need a new container where I can stretch my arms deep and wide and not hit any ceilings.
Yeah.
That I am starting at base camp. So that was my realization, that it's not about, did I not like the job anymore? Did I feel like I didn't have any more opportunity? None of that was the case. I loved my job. But I felt it was time for another container. And so that allowed me to be open, because in order to have a new opportunity, you have to be open.
Yes.
And I needed to probably be broken to shake myself up to saying, Tasanda, are you operating at the highest level of impact? The openness was thing one.
Yeah.
Thing two was to decide that through this journey, this interview process, I was going to be the best version of Tasanda today, and the Tasanda I'm so aspiring to become. So therefore, if I had the privilege to join this company, they knew exactly who they were getting. Exactly. And then I would say, in terms of preparing, again, I did the research. I connected deeply with my values, my purpose, and therefore then to have an opportunity to think about TIAA, a mission-driven, we return our profits back. It aligned to a full circle moment where every day I get to think about the Otis and Rosie Browns of the world, a retired educator, a father wanting to have lifetime income and opportunities for himself and his family. I get to connect to my purpose through my profession. And so I do think that for me, it's important to be okay getting uncomfortable.
Yes.
Reflection, asking yourself, are you hitting any aspect of your container? And if you are, be open to the possibility that there's another container to stretch you, to teach you, to allow you to be a better version of yourself. And that's, to me, what ultimately allowed me to leave an amazing company and to leg into leading and being a CEO of another.
And to continue to grow in the most spectacular way.
Yes.
Now, you've mentioned many times Rosie and Otis Brown. And I love it because you just completely light up when you talk about your mother and father. And there is a Rosie and Otis Brown Foundation. Tell us about them, and tell us about how the foundation embodies their spirit.
I mean, just saying their name sometimes gets me teared up, right? Because I'm first generation full integration. My parents grew up in segregation. You know, my father grew up in Louisiana. He's dealt with the Klan, just so many stories. My mother grew up in Alabama, being raised by her grandmother who could not read nor write, but was fierce.
Yes.
And when I think about their sacrifices, when I think about Rosie and Otis Brown embodies ordinary people, but boy, were they extraordinary. They gave me confidence. They taught me to reach for the moon. My mother taught me the power of empathy, faith. They taught me that we make the best decisions that we can with the faculties that you're given at that time. And so to think about, how can I take what two ordinary people did, who stood in the gap of a dad when kids needed a dad, who tutored boys, Black boys, who then would say, Miss Brown, I'm smart because you taught me. That's Otis and Rosie Brown. And what the foundation embodied was, one, I didn't want to wait until my parents passed to show them their impact. And so I wanted my father and my mother to be able to present another student with a scholarship with their name on it, to let them know that what they have done for me will transcend not just with my children, but with the community. Secondly, Otis and Rosie Brown and this foundation really unlocks the ownable assets because my title is rented. CEO is a rented title. Tasanda Brown Duckett and how I show up are my ownable assets.
Yes.
And I want people to know that their extraordinary is kindness, grit, tenacity, perseverance, courage, joy, laughter. It's what you own. And so the Otis and Rosie Brown Foundation is all about awarding scholarships and supporting the unseen through their character, because I want young people to know you may not always be first chair violinist. You may not always be a star athlete, but you can always be that person that demonstrated the hard work that it took to be a first chair violinist, so that when you go on through your career, or if you lose a job, get laid off, the title leaves, your ownable assets can continue. That's Otis and Rosie Brown, and that's what I want to share.
Yes, and there's incredible wealth in that, right? Those are real assets, real wealth. Yes.
They keep returning very strong dividends.
Yes, yes, as we can see. We're coming to the close of our hour. It's hard to believe. And as we're coming to a close, Thasunda, do you have a call to action for us, for our students?
I do. Well, first, let me just say thank you. I am full of gratitude. I get energized when I have an opportunity to be surrounded by our future, our youth. So congratulations to all of the young people that are on this call for what you are doing and what you will do. My call to action, one, I do think that we all have to continue to be bold, and in education, make sure that we are continuing to produce, as you are, women in STEM, women in business. Make sure that the companies that you work with and the alumni that we engage with, that we understand the power of access, whether that's an internship or exposure, whether that's just inviting a young woman to be a CEO for the day and come to New York and shadow me. We have to show the art of possibility, and we have to be unapologetic about it. I do think it's very important as a mandate to make sure that the women of Spelman always show up and know that their voice is necessary and required. The power of being a Black woman, it's not a liability, it's an asset. And in fact, you have a unique perspective. So when we think about diversity and inclusion, your perspective is so unique. And then finally, I would say to everyone on this call that are navigating corporate America or thinking about their internships or wanting to be an entrepreneur, understand that to much is given, much is required. And when you think about where we are, we need more Black Americans in different sectors. We need them in STEM. We need them in business. So we need to support the one who wants to be an investment banker. We have to make sure that when we get in, it's not just the only, we're bringing someone with us. And continue to know that your magic is real. You are not a unicorn. Even if in that room, you're the only one, there's a whole lot of other amazing Black women. So make sure you introduce them to your network so that we can make sure that there's no longer just Roz and I, that there are future Black women running companies in the present day before we're all done and, retired.
Well, thank you. Your words of wisdom are real gems. Access, possibility, showing up with our voice, our unique perspective. All of those are things that we can do. We can empower ourselves to do and make real change. Thank you so much for being with us today, Thasunda. And thank you to our audience and the great questions that you've asked. Mackenzie Ramsey, you are phenomenal. We are so grateful for the leadership that you have been giving Spelman College. Congratulations to you and all of your fellow seniors and all of our students at Spelman for being so resilient this year and showing up with grit and determination. Be on the lookout for our next courageous conversation. We'll be in touch to let you know when that will be. Until then, be safe, be the light, and keep the faith. Thank you.